Brought to you by Dr. Pepper, the official drink of Fansville here. And as Ohio State gets another huge win in this series in dominant fashion, they win it, 56-27. So in back-to-back years, they hang a massive amount of points on on Michigan. And that's the second straight year, by the way, in the last 2 years, that's the two highest scoring outputs that Ohio State has had in this history, 62 and then 56. It's the most points they've scored here in Ann Arbor. And they did it behind Justin Fields and J.K. Dobbins. We'll get to that in just a moment. We'll get to where I think Ohio State should be in the rankings in just a moment. But first, just on this game in general, I got to start by saying that my belief that Ohio State is the best team in the country has not wavered. This is, again, the most dominant and complete team that we've seen, and they have the resume to be ranked number one. Let's start there. Ohio State comes in here 56-27 over Michigan, and Michigan was playing their best football. They were throwing the ball really well, and they did in the first half. In fact, Shea Patterson was 14 of 19 for 250 yards and a touchdown in the first half. And you got to credit the defense, the coordinators. Greg Madison from Michigan last year comes to Ohio State this year to be the co-defensive coordinator, along with Jeff Hafley from the NFL. He's the secondary coach. They clamped down on that passing game. Now, there were a lot of drops on the outside from Michigan. There's no doubt. But in the second half, Shea Patterson was 4 of 24 for 55 yards and an interception. And they did this without Shaun Wade in the secondary. They've got three amazing corners: Jeff Okudah, Damon Arnett, and Shaun Wade. And they play them all the time. They have one safety and three corners on the field, generally three linebackers on the field. It's a unique style of defense, and they've had to change that a little bit and get different players on the field now because Shaun Wade was out today. And all they did was adjust, get guys in the right position, and held Shea Patterson in check, 4 of 24 in the second half. They didn't even need a great pass rush because Patterson, for the majority of the day, had time to throw. Chase Young was a real non-factor in this game, actually. He did not get to the quarterback. I can only think of one time that he maybe hurried Patterson or created some pressure when he had to throw it too soon. So Michigan did a great job against Chase Young. He was not Superman today, but the rest of the Avengers were fantastic. In particular, that secondary, even though they were shorthanded without Shaun Wade. That's another reason why I think they're the number one team in the country. There is no weakness. They have depth. They can make adjustments. The offense was incredible, led by J.K. Dobbins and that offensive line. That offensive line is really good. They don't get the credit that they're due, but Ohio State's offensive line is really tremendous. They're strong, they're physical, their guards are terrific. Jackson Myers, the center, he's really good. You got what I believe is the best offensive line in the Big Ten, top 3-4 offensive line in the country, and they're doing it for a back who is sensational. Dobbins shows you everything. The thing I love about J.K. Dobbins is his versatility. He's a complete back. He's not just a speedster out of the backfield. He's not just a hammerhead in between the tackles. He's not just a guy that can come out and win on third down in the passing game. He literally does it all. He can block at times if you want him to block. He can find the little holes in the defense, in particular on short yardage, and win with power. He can win with speed on the outside, like his last touchdown, and now he goes for over 200 yards in this series. He's the first player in this series, Michigan-Ohio State, with 200 rush yards and 4 touchdowns in a game. So a remarkable performance from J.K. Dobbins. He was sensational today. There's no doubt about it. And the only other player that would even match him would be a guy like Justin Fields, who was terrific. And he showed a lot of guts today. He got that leg rolled up on, came right back in, maybe threw the best pass of the day to Garrett Wilson for a touchdown. Wilson shines, by the way. Wilson, 3 catches, 118 yards and a touchdown. He was terrific down the field on those deep routes for Justin Fields. It all comes down to this, folks. This team, I think, is going to go to the playoff, okay? And I've done a lot of Ohio State games. This is a team that I've believed in really from the beginning of the season. They have everything that you need to win a national championship. You can make a strong case that they don't even need to win next week in this era of not having to win your conference championship in order to go to the playoff. With their resume, they probably would go anyways, along with the winner of the game. both teams from the Big Ten potentially getting into the playoff, depending on what happened in the LSU and Georgia game next week. But Ohio State has probably done enough. Now, that being said, they're going to want to cap it off and win a championship and win the Big Ten and do it the right way. They're also going to have a chance next week to do something that's never been done before in college football, which is capping off a 10-0 regular season plus conference championship game in a Power 5 league that plays 9 conference games in the regular season and has a championship game. We've never seen that before. So Ohio State trying to set some history, make some history next week in Indianapolis when they play the winner of that Wisconsin and Minnesota game. This team, with what their resume will be, again now with another top 15 win, this one on the road, with the way they've played, with the dominance that they've shown, there's no possible way that the committee can change them out of number one next week. I think even if LSU is able to beat Georgia, you would look at what Ohio State were to do, and if they were to win next week in what would likely be a top 10 matchup, top 12 matchup, they would have another ranked opponent under their belt. I don't see a scenario where the playoff committee says, LSU, you're number one, Ohio State, you're number two, if they both win out. I understand LSU has been tremendous and they've got great wins, but now Ohio State is starting to get those great wins and those ranked wins, and they've been better. They've been more balanced. They've been more dominant. They came into this game with the number one scoring offense and defense in the country, the number one point differential in the country, and that is largely staying put with their performance, in particular in the second half here today against Michigan. Ryan Day's been tremendous. He's been absolutely fantastic, and that team is well on their way to making some history, and we'll see if they can cap it off next week in Indianapolis as we head there for the Big Ten championship game. Really quickly on Michigan, I would just say that I still believe that Michigan is in a far better place with Jim Harbaugh than they are without Jim Harbaugh. If you look at what they were when he was hired, they were a 5-7 team in 2014. 5-7. It was only the third time that they had missed a bowl since the Big Ten started allowing teams to go to other bowls outside of the Rose Bowl. Only the third. Rich Rodriguez missed 2, and then that was the third. Brady Hoke missed 1 at 5-7. That's what Jim Harbaugh inherited. Think about the gap between that team, 5-7 in 2014, and guess what Ohio State was in 2014? The national champions with Urban Meyer. And I understand you do not want to lose to Michigan. I get that. I still believe that the gap is closer now than it was then. I still believe that you would rather have a chance at a 10-win season than be 5-7 and missing a bowl. I still believe that you would rather play in the last few years twice against Ohio State with playoff implications in the game rather than being 5-7 and not going to a bowl game for the third time, basically in bowl history here in the Big Ten. So you've got to understand where you came from, Michigan fans, to understand where you could potentially go. This is not a good performance from Michigan. Way too many mistakes. They couldn't make adjustments in the second half. Clearly, this is disappointing, but you're still in a much better place now than you were in 2014, being a 5-7 football team. Some perspective is a much-needed ingredient here on a Thanksgiving week. That's going to do it for me. Our next appointment, you and I, is going to be next Wednesday on Breaking the Huddle. Make sure to tune into that. I'll have all the information after the new rankings are released on Tuesday night. We'll see what happens the rest of the day here in college football with the Iron Bowl, with that Big Ten West title on the line, with Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Bedlam on Fox later tonight with Joe Davis and Brock Heward and Bruce Feldman on the call. Can't wait for that one. But for here in the Big House, it is a dominant performance from the number one team in the country, who I think will stay the number one team in the country. Ohio State gets it done behind Justin Fields and J.K. Dobbins. You've been in the booth with me, Joel Klatt. This is brought to you by Dr. Pepper, the official drink of Fansville. Thanks for watching.